Well, hello. We're coming, and there's my voice already. I'm Gillian Mason, and we're coming to you live from Meanjin, Brisbane, from Australia's premier health informatics conference, this year called Health Innovation Community. We're on Yagaraul and Turrbal land, and we're really, really pleased. We want to pay respects to the elders past and present, and Australia's first scientists who have been innovating on these lands and around these waterways for 60,000 years. I've got together a panel of my friends, my colleagues, and some experts in digital health and health informatics. And the reason why we've decided to do this live is because it's really important to us to make sure that what we're discussing, the future of healthcare in Australia, is just more broadly available. So super pleased to have you. We're also so lucky to have Pete from Talking HealthTech with us, and he'll be moderating some conversation in the chat. Oh, cool, there's Pete. He is the audio guy, the visual guy, and the brains behind this whole outfit. He'll be moderating conversations, so you're so welcome to put comments in the chat. He'll bring them up, ask us questions. And Pete, do you have any kind of opening words?
Oh, look,
advice?
I just think that advice, you guys will rock it anyway, so that's I think that's great. I'll just use my microphone here. I'm really interested to see what people have to say, and I'm so grateful that we've got this opportunity to share what's happening here at HIC with anyone else around the world that wants to get a bit of a taste of what's going on. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Fantastic. So my colleagues on the panel, we've got Monica Trujillo from Telstra Health. She's the Chief What's happening with my words? There's been so many conversations, I tell you. Chief Health Officer and Enterprise Growth Executive at Telstra Health, and a medical doctor by background.
Yes. Hi.
So pleased to have you.
I've changed roles. You can call me anything you want, but calling me your friend is the best compliment. So you can say that.
Love that. Health Innovation Community. So that's really getting across our message. And then we've got Saran Chamberlain, consumer research partner and friend and colleague. You're actually the only person on the panel who started in software and started with computing. So we're so pleased to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You'll talk to us about all sorts of things, but really importantly, the consumer and patient perspective in health research, in health service design and safety. And then Mark Nevin, who comes from several different backgrounds. I mean, you started as a clinician as well, and so did I actually, so we're kind of mostly clinical, some consumer. Started as a clinician, retrained in health policy and economic policy, and you've been recently advising the Australian government on regulations, all things AI. And then, because the list of different involvements is extensive, you've been our interim Chief Executive Officer at Australasian Institute of Digital Health as well. Do you mind just maybe starting the conversation, just because you've led us through this period of change and looking forward, to talk about what's been interesting to you at the conference?
Thank you, Jill. It's great to be here, and it's great to be here with this wonderful panel today. So look, the conference has been phenomenal so far. We've had wonderful community vibe, as always, at AIDH and HIC events, so it's been wonderful to see and observe that again, have people back getting together in person and just meeting people that you've been on Zoom calls with for the last 4 or 5 years. You've not actually met in person until now. That's just been wonderful to just connect a human being that you've been talking to for so long. Look, I'm loving a lot of the recurring themes that are coming through, particularly around the importance of governance, looking at complex advances in technology that are just moving at such phenomenal pace as well. It's actually really hard to keep up. Every 6 months, even look at AI space, I'm just blown away at the speed and pace of that technological change. That's really, really phenomenal. Other things that I'm enjoying hearing about people focusing on the real economic value add from these digital technologies, and how we should be looking at, not just looking at the return on investment directly from the technology itself, but looking at the implications for population health, looking at the implications for consumer experience, looking at the implications for providers, health equity and health efficiency, and thinking broadly and holistically. Because it takes time to see the return on investment from these technologies. A lot of people have talked about that you might even see a dip in productivity before you really start to advance through. So that's as an economist, that's music to my ears. Loving the focus on patient safety, co-design as well, and yeah, it's been phenomenal so far.
Thank you. I just was thinking back to some of the conversations we've had on AI, and also, just so you're ready, I'm throwing to you next. We had Dr. Christopher Longhurst, Chief Medical and Digital Officer at UC San Diego Health, talking this morning, and he said that AI is going to be the most important innovation since antibiotics. So important innovation in healthcare in general. So we're not just talking about digital health and fancy technologies, but we've had these interesting conversations about how it's going to change everything healthcare. We're going to get to that. But Saran, from your perspective, what's been the most interesting or something that's provided, insight into the next big thing in health?
So I think obviously from a consumer or patient perspective, or people with lived experience, is the efficiencies that there can actually be for the patient experience. So the whole, I have lived experience of stroke, and so I've gone to a lot of different specialists and clinicians, and you spend a lot of time, one, finding the right people, but also just saying the same thing. This is what I've done. I've tried this, or I have tried this. And it's frustrating, and the time I think that you do have with clinicians are really quite small, as well as the waiting time. And it's quite disempowering to sort of not really get anywhere when you actually see them. But seeing basically the breadth of the research that's happening, and obviously not knowing it because it's all happening in the background at the moment, is really exciting in sort of seeing that there will be that efficiency, and the connection across all multidisciplinary teams, I think, will make it empower people to be able to really get the healthcare that they need, or even need to be aware of.
Yeah, we were having a conversation this morning too about how not just AI, but systems that are making sure that health information is available for people when you need it, where you need it. It's taking away so much of the admin stuff that the clinicians are busy doing, so they can listen to you.
Yes.
And you get a chance to also have a look at what turns up in your record to make sure it's what was important to you.
And I was listening to a last session, and I'm really bad at remembering what it was, but they were very much focused, or clinicians were very much focused on the fact of, if we have the AI and the digital as supporting the clinicians, we can actually really be engaged with the patient and look at the mental health and look at and really sort of speak with the person, which just makes it so much better as an experience.
Yeah. And I think, so I'm coming into this from a couple of perspectives. I'm a clinician, a physio by background, and I've worked a lot in rehabilitation, and then I've had my own experiences as a disabled woman, having had rehabilitation, and the value of the multidisciplinary collaboration, and that's kind of big fancy words, but the value of having lots of different perspectives, different people who think in different ways, working together to solve a problem for you, that's so valuable. And I was doing a little bit of research because I'm a bit new to the health innovation and health informatics community. I'm a physio, been doing telehealth, like I said, for years, but I didn't know I was a digital health clinician. But this conference has been around for 30 years. So 1993 was the first HIC. It was here in Brisbane. So 30 years later, the value for me in this community that I've found is the fact that there's different people, different backgrounds. There's people from tech companies, doctors, there's administrators, there's health consumers all coming together. And you've started in this health informatics community, Monica, as a doctor, you did surgical training in Colombia, now you're working for Telstra Health. How do you come to identify as a health informatics interested clinician?
I think it's one of those cases when someone asks you to do something and all your colleagues take a step back and you're left at the front going, oh, I have to do it because I knew how to do a PowerPoint better than the others. In all seriousness, I come from a family of engineers, and my late sister, was doing her master's in AI in the 90s in Scotland. My dad put the first computing centre up where we had to have it really air conditioned and those massive computers, and we had those cards at home. So that was our home discussion. So when I did medicine, they were like, what are you doing medicine? But then when I got back into tech, I got into tech because I wanted to be a public health physician. And I wanted to be a I was saying this to someone today, I wanted to be a public health physician because, and then I got in there and I saw the data sets that we were using were and I'm like, I want to get the right data at the right time to make the right decisions. I'm still in that journey. to get the right data sets for the right decision. But I no longer want to be a public health physician. And then my family said, you came back to us. So that's how I ended here. And I think as you learn, I am absolutely passionate, and I agree that this has I've always believed the fundamental ability, and that's when my eyes open, for that key to open up everyone to use information health the way they need to, and at the time that they need to, whether you're a consumer, a carer, or both at the same time, or a health system researcher. That's sort of where I'm still driving towards. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, I'd like to pick up a bit on that, because what I learned this morning, and I'm trying to remember actually who said it, I don't want to misrepresent anyone. We had Simon Koss, who's the Chief Medical Officer for Microsoft, talking about what the digital enables in the health system. So he kind of categorized it into three main parts. One, there's the digital record, so the systems that make basically make the records available. And then there's systems that are creating insights that can be used by everyone in the system to make decisions or allocate, or their decisions too about allocating resources appropriately. And then there's digital tools for engagement. But if we start right at the record, none of the AI systems work without data. And I don't remember who said it, I'm going to think on this, but somebody told us that between 95 and 99% of the data that's been traditionally used in the systems to report on health outcomes, report on even probably things like how many appointments someone has, I've got that slightly wrong. The 95 to 99% of what's in the record is free text, as opposed to the 5 to 1% is that data that we've used to report on health. And so this is where, for me, these large language models, these different ways of small and large language models, depending on what you're doing, ways of getting what's in the text, the stuff that's written there, which is probably most of the stuff which is important to patients. This is writing about what the conversations were about. How do you get that stuff out? And, how do you then learn from, learning health system, learn from what's written in the text? So I wonder if you have a comment first, Monica.
I'd love to have a comment.
Yep. Please.
I love a comment because, and I can't claim this because the team has been working in this for like 4 years. And part of it, when you look at unstructured data, the team with, a fantastic team in Telstra Health and Clinical Innovators have been working with RMIT, and this was a digital health CRC work, and I don't know if anyone saw it, but the team got an award for the deteriorating resident index, so it's around residents and aged care facilities. If you think about unstructured data, what they had to do, and this all credit to the computer scientists, had to work with all this unstructured data to get the information around 30 indicators that will demonstrate that the resident is deteriorating. And this is all from unstructured data. So the majority of the work is around it. I had a view that we've tried to make this whole structured data a bit too hard for clinicians. You have 5 minutes, you have pressure time, you want to document, and trying to put this in boxes is really difficult. So if we can do something that grabs that and actually gets them into a way to do it, that's a much better way to do it than actually trying to force, after 20 years, into the same boxes, right? We just have to do something different.
Yeah. And I mean, there's two things probably that make sense for you to speak to here, Mark. There's both lots happening in terms of regulating AI and then the systems. But I'm thinking about clinician adoption, because you're talking about saying, how do you get clinicians enough time left after they've spent time talking to their patients, thinking things through, to document things. You've done a survey recently of the AIDH community with Fujitsu looking at adoption of AI. Tell us more.
Thank you. So, look, the data is a critical ingredient for this, and data quality is really, really important. But one of the recurring themes before I come on to the survey that we've also heard at this conference is about the ability of AI to reduce the cognitive overload and the burnout for clinicians, and making it just easier for them to spend time with the patient, because they're not over typing information into a computer, etc. And they can actually engage with the patient, understand and build a rapport with the individual as well, and use the technology as an enabler to allow you to spending more face time with your patients, and also to communicate succinctly to your patients as well. And you can spit out like a summary paragraph very quickly, but needs to be curated by an individual. So AIDH and Fujitsu surveyed the digital health community, surveyed about 10% of the Australian AIDH membership, and some of the key findings that we had were a lot of optimism about AI for the future, but a significant gap in terms of readiness for AI. So we looked at breaking down a few different things, or what readiness means, or what that looks like. So we asked questions around whether healthcare organizations have AI policies in place, but 25% did. About whether
What percentage?
25. We also asked about whether organizations have an AI expert internally to guide the adoption. 25% reported that they did. Thirdly, around the workforce and whether the workforce is being trained. They've got policies and procedures in place to train people. 25% did, but staggeringly across all three, only 10% of healthcare organizations had got policies, an internal expert, and had started to upskill their workforce in that respect. Like the piece about human beings overseeing these technologies is extremely important, and ensuring that the information is then curated by that individual, because AI systems can have bias in them, etc., and kind of errors and can hallucinate. So you need to have a human being overseeing how that's being used. And healthcare is a human business, and people's lives are at stake, and people are in a very complex emotional state when they come in to receive healthcare. So having that empathy and rapport and allowing clinicians to play that more empathetic role for patients is particularly important. And AI can save them time to do that, but they still need a human in the loop overseeing the quality of it.
So we need humans overseeing it. We need lots of different types of humans overseeing it too, I think. Types in terms of, we can think about you need to have different points of view based on your experience with technology, your knowledge of the health system. And I think that where there's an opportunity for us is to get more patients and members of the public, and then professionals from other sectors involved in the governance of AI in healthcare. I feel like that is just something that hasn't really been explored yet. So we think about governance can involve things like making sure that a data set that's being used to train a model has enough representative data from, that the people involved in that cohort that the thing was trained on look like the general public. Saran and I have a lot of experience working in research where people with disabilities are, something's being specifically designed for people with disabilities. So there's a big focus in the workforce that is involved in governance of these research projects, involved in the conduct of these research projects with disability inclusion skills. But that's not normal in the system. And I'm wondering, in the co-design work you've been doing, because it's not just in designing health tech for people with disabilities, you're involved broadly. What can we learn, and what do we need to do to make sure that mainstream healthcare is going to be fit for purpose for people with disabilities?
I just want to go back to something that you said, and I don't exactly know what the name of the role is, but it's like a CX, so it's the consumer experience manager or something or other. And I know that there have been roles such as that in some technology companies. So I wonder whether or not it has been experience in that, or whether that was even one of the questions when you did actually look at the community. Sorry, so yes, I will answer your question.
Yeah, no, we didn't ask about that specifically, but having, to Jill's point, having a range of perspectives around this is really important. I'm a big advocate for individuals need to consent for how their data is used, including use for AI tools and applications, particularly when some of the data can end up in the public domain if you put it into a large language model, for instance. But individuals need to be empowered and need to be involved in the design of how their data is used in particular, and also ensuring that the data set is representative of the local population as well. But you don't need to be an expert in AI to be able to contribute to the governance as well, and to speak from a rights and an equity perspective as well, and that's particularly important.
And of course, also in that, you can have the consumer experience, but they're not just their trauma. That this is still a role, it's still a position description. And so generally the prerequisite is a little bit flipped in that you have to have that lived experience, but make sure that there are still the skills underneath it to then support the actual role, so they're not just that tokenistic kind of person involved with that lived experience.
And just before you go on to the rest of your answer, there are more companies and organisations I'm seeing with that Chief Patient Officer
That's
role.
it, yes.
And I've
Yep.
seen a lot in pharma now. I'm involved in health technology assessment as well, and some of the big pharma companies are putting on Chief Patient Advocacy Officers and Patient Experience Directors, but it's beyond the experience. It's not just to look at the UX for using an app. It's
Yeah.
really around making sure that the right people are involved in the design.
That's right.
And the right
Yeah.
people are involved in the data governance. And
Yeah.
I think that's what the responsibility of that person should be, but I'm not sure in practice that's really kind of what the function of someone in that role is doing yet. I don't know, maybe.
And I think just like with everything else, even involving consumers, it's still and just like with digital and AI in the health system, there's a lot going on and there's a lot being learnt. And as long as it's progressing, probably never as fast as anyone actually wants it to be, as long as it's progressing and actually getting that feedback from people who are involved, which sort of comes back to your question, that's what actually sort of, I guess, makes it actually sort of beneficial to organisations rather than just that tick the box tokenistic side of things.
Yep, for sure. And you're so ready to talk anyway.
I
Hopefully
wanted to
also
ask you guys a question, but you go.
you can. And first though, I just want to hark back to the fact that you with the Australian Digital Health Agency some years back
Yes.
were the Clinician and Consumer Engagement and Clinical Governance Division
It's a
lead.
long title, yeah.
But this isn't new, just as actually AI is not new. It's actually been around for a long time,
Since
right?
the 1950s.
Generative AI.
Since the 50s. Right? AI has been around since the 50s.
But also, consumer engagement's not new.
No,
But
no.
it's so much more mature now and it's still nowhere where it needs to be. So answer the question however you're going to, and then I might add something.
Well, what I was going to answer around that is because the interesting thing is we have the streams and we separate the streams into the clinical engagement and the consumer engagement. And the richness, I think, comes when you put the two streams together, right? Because the richness is from seeing each other's perspectives and going, oh. And that's what we were trying to do at the agency, right? Like every committee had to have a clinician and a consumer chair. And that was just the first start of, if you have the chairs, you can't, the power has to be imbalanced. You have the two chairs, there's ability to bring that, because the richness is in bringing it together. Everyone goes in there to do a good job every day. Everyone that joins a consumer experience team wants to give the best. It's when you start going, oh, that's how you see it and that's how you did it. Oh, that's what you're getting from it. That's what you do. That's where I think that's where the gold is, right? So bringing that together, that was the whole purpose of bringing that together when we're at the agency as well. And I'm really, really biased, but I think that at least normalised the fact that we at least have to have chairs from, that we're able to come together to put an agenda together, that we're able to get a program together, that looked at the report together, that put priorities together. So anyway, that's what I was going. But what I really wanted to ask you guys, because I thought it was really interesting from today, it was actually both days. Did you see that the AI is an empathy booster concept in which, you had the doctor do the three lines, and then the AI machine generate something that was tailored more to that person, and then feeling that there was more empathy, and then adding, obviously, today it was reinforced by the... what do you guys think about that? That was super interesting.
I would love to talk about that. And also, just so we don't forget, I knew this might happen, that we would forget that we're live and we're just talking amongst friends, but there's quite a number of people watching. Hi, Janelle Bowden. Dr. Janelle Bowden actually has been kind of a leader in consumer involvement in clinical trials, so it's so great that you're there. And I just missed your comment. I'm going to get Pete to actually make sure that your question gets asked to us in a second. But talking about AI and empathy, yesterday John Nostas from Nostas Lab, which is a technology think tank that goes a bit more broad than healthcare, was talking about the fact that, firstly, empathy, like what's really the definition of empathy? Because empathy is different for every person.
Yeah, true.
We have people, now we have a better understanding of neurodivergence, for example. So it's not just an automatic thing that if you're dealing with a human, they will necessarily be able to empathize with you and your experience. So we can't pretend that the humans always have that right. But he was talking about the fact that maybe the hallucinations that come out of generative AI
Yes.
models, we've said, oh, well, they're just errors. But what if that's actually kind of creative thinking or suggestions? Or anyway, it got me thinking along a long, big, maybe unrelated tangent too. But have you got any reflections on? No, we can.
I thought
we
it was
can throw
like,
elsewhere.
I thought, that's like my husband. If he doesn't know something, he'll make it up. And I'm going, oh yeah, but he knows that that's exactly what I'm looking for. And my kids tease me all the time. I said, Mom, you're such an intelligent person. You still believe the stuff that he says, and he's making it up, and he laughs after that. But it's really interesting because it's maybe the fact that you want an answer and it's giving you something just to even be thought-provoking. Is it a hallucination? Is it a informed makeup? I don't know. I thought it was really it's thought-provoking. I don't know that I have the answer, but it was really thought-provoking.
Yeah, but in a way that you can ask a person a question 3 different ways and get 3 different answers that feel like to that person they're the best answer, given the context, given the information. Thinking about it as a patient and this whole empathy situation, there's been research studies and clinical trials looking at chatbots that have been more, that patients have more wanted to engage with than doctors around different things to do with mental health. Don't want to stereotype, because I don't think this is just for young people, but there are different models of care around depression and anxiety management where beyond screening, people have felt more comfortable to talk to a chatbot, and then the chatbot gives them different options. There's suggestions, right? But I think there's a lot of promise there, and we shouldn't always assume that the human's going to have it better than the machine. Yeah. Thinking of Pete, can we throw to you, because there has been questions. I wasn't quick enough. What did firstly Janelle want to pose to the panel?
Yeah, sure. Look, there's been some good discussion in the chat. Sorry, while I lean forward to the microphone, there's quite a few comments just acknowledging and agreeing with the conversations. General sentiment from quite a few people, Janelle in agreement that my summary of some of the comments I'm popping up on screen here are that, let's let the machines do the things or the computers do the things that the computers are good at, so the humans can do more of the humaning. And why do we need to rely on the clinicians putting in information into a field when they've got better things to do to look after patients? Janelle's pointing out the need for giving humans more time so they can to have that oversight of AI. I did see Dr. Nadia Amorum put in a point that there's probably some more collaboration that needs to be done between all the different stakeholders, which I know this conversation is about, but particularly with engaging the clinicians in that designing the user experience and customer experience and how the system feels, and the need to, we could build a good AI or a good tool, but then if there's a lot of free text fields that get put in, and then how are we getting the good data to be able to actually do something with that is my interpretation there. But I did put that comment on screen. And general agreements, quite a few questions were similar. I believe Janelle did ask the question of that there's quite a few, it's quite a double barrel one, but there was also another as well that came through about this is all great, but like what time frame are we talking about? I think that's the thing, because I think we all agree that this needs to happen, but are we talking about the next couple of months, or are we talking about the next couple of years, is the general consensus in the chat.
That is a fantastic question, and it's really interesting to see that some areas have really embraced AI deployment and are using it at the clinical code phase as well, in areas that are reliant on medical imaging technology, in particular like the radiology sector, looking at skin conditions and dermatology, ophthalmology, etc. They've got tried and tested and FDA or TGA approved technologies that can be used in clinical care that are approved as medical devices. And the large language models technologies are a bit slower in terms of adoption. It depends on the use case though, and you've got to think about it in terms of like the risk as well, as categorize those around the risk. So the highest risk things are things that are influencing clinical decision making at the point of care, and then there are other things that are more behind the scenes, like around operational, like around patient flows, clinical coding, etc., which are being used and are much lower risk as well for adoption. But for any of these, you need to have a solid governance framework and the thinking through what are the risks, who's been involved, who have you had conversations with about in advance to check suitability, appropriateness, etc., and its use at that local healthcare environment.
Can I add, because we've got to remember that there's some areas of our sector that still work on paper, and that having a digital infrastructure is vital for AI, and then we can't really widen the difference for those that really have electronic, that can throw AI, that have the ability to do that, are going to run way ahead while we're still trying to bring the others to it. So I do think we need to put a little bit of attention on bringing some of the digital infrastructure to a level that we can have a better level playing field for those AI technologies. Probably my only word of caution, I think.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about when I talk to people who like to, distance themselves from everything digital for lots of reasons. I think a lot of the chat about digital makes people think that you're going to ask them to have a telehealth appointment or that you're going to ask them to use an app. But actually, a lot of what we're talking about this conference and the majority of spending in digital health at the moment from government is on the infrastructure. And so you need to have a digitally enabled record where your blood test result can get shared with a specialist and a GP so that you can go and have a face-to-face appointment and have someone write you a paper script. You still need that digital infrastructure. So we're not just talking about getting rid of every other way of accessing healthcare. We're talking about making sure that there's an infrastructure that supports excellent healthcare.
I think Monica makes an excellent point. And one thing that's really interesting, though, about this is how AI can have the ability for a service to leapfrog into the future. It's a really good example earlier, also during Simon Cost's presentation, around Drumbeat AI, which is for hearing impairment amongst Aboriginal kids out in rural and remote Australia. And that empowering Aboriginal medical services to take a photograph of something and then send that photograph back to get advice in from a hub around treatment and initiating treatment earlier for different hearing impairment conditions, and just allowing somebody to go back to school and to function as a child to their full ability with using technology in a really, really clever way.
Yeah, that was so interesting. Drumbeat AI, I think, was one of the projects there that's been doing that. And there's so many things that we could talk about. But I'm wondering about health equity and making sure that everything we're doing in digital doesn't then give us a way to speed up or further entrench systemic ableism and racism and make it harder for people to access healthcare who already had trouble. There's lots of local examples where, of course, this technology improves access to this. I feel like there's a lot more to talk about, and we've talked about it in lots of sessions about the people. What kind of skills do we need in our healthcare and digital health workforce that mean that a diverse group of people can work together to solve a problem? And so we've worked on some work together where we've co-designed interventions. We're actually co-designing what is going to be first tested in a pen and paper booklet around post-stroke fatigue at the moment, right? But what I'm wondering if we can talk about is the process and what the team looks like and what's needed to co-design, whether or not it's an AI-enabled whatever, or whether it's what's going to be a booklet in its first instance. Kind of the skills in the healthcare workforce, the diversity in the healthcare workforce. Yeah, talk to your experience and what's important.
So there's some amazing researchers, including yourself, but also we have, I think there's 3 of us who are lived experience of stroke. And the biggest thing was actually sort of saying, well, what are the priorities? And one of the things I suppose is my specialty is I can co-facilitate groups who have lived experience of stroke and trauma. So where I come from is a non-biased approach. So I'll have the questions that the researchers or the team have actually developed, but by asking the questions from a lived experience side of things, one, I have that empathy and understanding, as well as the fact that I can keep the conversation going. But I can also get a bit, like as you explained, that the richer conversation and the real, things probably that people wouldn't necessarily say to clinicians or to researchers. So I feel like, researchers and clinicians have the best of intention, but also can come in with that little bit of a narrower perspective of exactly what they're trying to achieve. So we were able to run these work groups and then actually sort of then summarise them and sort of refine them a bit more to then go back. So it was a constant sort of evolution of what basically we needed to do for the people that basically experience that post-stroke fatigue. And it was great because, again, all the team was seen as a level playing field, and having, in some ways, people with lived experience can fill the gaps that researchers and clinicians can't. But the same thing goes the other way around as well. What we don't know, obviously, from a professional perspective and from a application, we don't know that either. But having the whole team hearing each other and respecting each other makes it for a massively, I guess, I think, a successful project.
Yeah, and that was kind of reflected too in the work that was happening with clinicians, because with these different fatigue interventions, and some of them are technology, some of them are looking at brain imaging and making sure that what's seen on the brain in people with fatigue is used as a biomarker to drive treatment, right? But it's being then properly thought about from a patient perspective, from a clinician perspective, from a system perspective. And I just came before here, came from a meeting with the executives in digital health group. Here at the conference, we've got a couple of different streams, which is really excellent. There were the same kinds of conversations we were having there about having a diversity of people working in executive roles. As we were having on Saturday, we had an academic research translation workshop, and there's multidisciplinary research teams, but now it's not just academic researchers working together, it's clinicians, it's health service administrators, it's executives.
I'd love to come in off the back of that. I think this is like music to my ears in terms of what we're hearing, but there's some really important kind of cultural dimensions around engaging with people from a variety of different multidisciplinary backgrounds in terms of technology, and people coming in with the right attitude towards it. Like, everybody's got something really valuable in terms of perspective to contribute as well. I need to open-minded and listen as well, and listen to what others are doing and saying. And I've been on hundreds of committees and supported hundreds of committees, and it's amazing the difference in the conversation that's happening in the room in a committee when there's a consumer participant as part of that. It just changes the dynamic of the conversation, just raises the quality of the conversation and the dialogue that's happening. So it's extremely important. And one of the wonderful things about the digital health community as well is just we all come from a variety of different backgrounds already, so we have to work together and we've got to collaborate, or else it's just not going to happen.
We said yesterday we have to, Jocelyn, I'm forgetting Jocelyn's last name now, but one of our keynote speakers, a behaviouralist, was saying we've got to collaborate or we'll die. These are big and urgent problems. And I'm noticing now we've got some comments from people in our clinical trials sector. And I think there's so much digital infrastructure and digital health innovation coming into the clinical trials sector. I'm going to throw to you, Pete, to let us know what Gudrun has asked particularly, but she works with CTIQ, which is another collaborative organisation of different clinical trials organisations across the country, bringing people together to solve problems. So what would she like to ask?
No, I think they're great questions, because they're the type of questions that people that think about these tools as we're having these quite big conversations about the role of AI in healthcare and emerging tech. But she's got a great question. If you're using AI, do you still have the option of tailoring your message to the patient like a human would? So I guess we're at that stage of like, how does this thing practically work? Like, do I just throw it up there and let the computer decide and then we kind of cross the fingers? Or what level of customization and tailoring?
So that's a question for the doctor first.
Well, I think that's what for those that weren't here today, that was part of how what Simon Koss was showing, how the same data set's effective for a patient letter, for a referral, for different question from patients. So I think a simple answer is yes, but the process to get there is not that simple, right? But I do think that it creates more satisfaction because you're actually getting your question answered the way you want it to answered with the same data set that was captured in 5 minutes by used for different purposes. I thought that was incredible, wasn't it?
That's like ChatGPT, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was great. Yeah, so, for those that weren't here, Simon showed and he put a data set, same one of a shorthand note into Foundry, I think it was, and just gave it different prompts around whether use this one to do a referral letter, to answer a patient question, to do a patient information leaflet, and to the other one that I thought was great, to tell me what the patient is concerned or priorities are, and it gave them. That was really interesting. So I think yes, it can be used for that, right?
I thought that was really interesting too, and I'm realizing that AI, when we say AI, it means lots of different things to different people. And so what we're talking about at the moment was taking the shorthand notes that a clinician would make during an appointment, pasting them into, this was a sandbox. This was kind of a test. A test piece of technology, a sandbox that he had to play. I don't know what the technology exactly was that was behind that.
I think it was Foundry, but anyway, yeah, that's what it was. The
And
sandbox.
you could maybe explain a little bit more of the
don't ask me
techno.
techie stuff.
But this isn't about using a chatbot, or it's not about pulling data out of a system that we're kind of really not connected to let the machines do the healthcare. Well, yes, you.
No. I was more so thinking that what it, for me, from a patient perspective, is that it makes it more efficient, and it makes it so that it's in my language, and so that so I don't sort of go, okay, you're giving us these technical terms, and whilst I probably know a lot of my technical terms now, only because it's been 11 and a half years, but first up, all the things that were being told to me, I had no clue, but having it sort of in that layman's term, or in that just that simple term, and whether or not sometimes I'm like, just give me bullet points, would be fantastic. So that sort of process was really great, as well as the fact of sort of, and so that other part was what other things might that patient be feeling, or be concerned about, which is of course mental health. So that was really, really exciting. And I think, and just from a personal perspective, having one hand, and whilst that was like Foundry or whatever, but I use ChatGPT more so, not because, well, there are sometimes I want to sound a lot smarter, but there are times when it's like I have one hand, and so to type a quick message is usually a yes, that's great. But sometimes that whole ChatGPT, so that's that AI, but it's certainly, I wouldn't then sort of not look at it and sort of throw it out there, and I guess that's sort of what he was talking about today as well.
Yeah, and I can't remember the person's name, but I did read your comment there and question that was about why are we holding clinicians holding machines to a higher standard than we hold clinicians to, in terms of expecting the output to be accurate, or the medical diagnosis to be accurate at all times. We are aiming for accuracy. It's really important in safety, but clinicians get it wrong too. And so do you have comments in terms of safety with our AI-enabled systems that are supporting diagnosis?
The comment I just popped up on the screen there from Tiasha was that we expect that AI should be 100% right. Why is 95% not enough when doctors are 66% accurate when working individually, or 85% collectively, according to a study that she's put up in the chat too. So we hold the computers to a much higher standard than the humans doing the care.
Oh, well, that could be a whole other hour on that. But we start with to err is human, right? Yeah, we all continuous improvement machines in ourselves as we improve. So I think, but we expect machines to be a higher standard, I guess, because they're machines. So I guess it's a perceived bias. It's biased, really, isn't it?
I think it is, and I think though it also gives us the opportunity to pick up way more things than we would as humans. So again, who said this? One of our keynote speakers this morning was talking about the fact that you could have a AI clinical decision support tool suggest to you the 3 most likely differential diagnoses after you've put in your medical note in short form, or you've had a listening device write a medical note for you. It could suggest here's the 3 most likely diagnoses, and here's also 3 common rare things that maybe you have missed. So it's not to replace your clinical judgment, but maybe it's going to get over your biases. If you've made an assumption about the person in front of you, it might remind you based on data. So long as we have data about a representative population, Saran's going, you're really wanting to add something.
I just think that from what I've seen from, I guess, both keynotes yesterday and today, is that AI is not to replace the clinician, but AI is to assist and to have better patient care and to make it more efficient and less cumbersome for clinicians. And I think I saw that, is that it's not sort of saying, and I think someone had mentioned sort of years ago with the ECG, where they were sort of saying, you still have to read the reports, because they thought that their jobs would become redundant. But it hasn't. What it's done is it's assisted to then make that time to be able to, I guess, spend the time on probably things that humans and clinicians can do. And so using that AI for the better, to be able to actually sort of provide the best care.
And just to add to that point around expecting a higher standard for the technology than we do of human beings. So in the healthcare system, we have a lot of established processes around safety, governance, procurement, vetting of staff before you let them loose on the general public. With new technologies like AI, they are in their infancy. A lot of them are black box type technologies, so you don't really know the basis for which the decision is being made. And that's part of the challenge with using those technologies, around that the technologies do have limitations, human beings have limitations. What we're hopefully moving towards is a scenario whereby the technology's got phenomenal advantages, human beings have advantages, and the two together bring us to a much greater place as well in terms of just accuracy, diagnosis, better human experience for people when they're engaging with services, reducing burnout. Is all really getting to that nirvana of just the quadruple aim that we've heard a lot about at this conference.
And on that quadruple aim as well, we had Professor Claire Sullivan talking to us about research that's been done recently that's shown the higher the digital maturity level of a health service, so not just if an AI system is being used, but across the board when the infrastructure is and the workflows and the workforce capability around digital is more mature, then healthcare outcomes are better. But it's hard to prove that in the short term. You were talking about needing to think about all of this digital maturity, so the skills of clinicians, the culture of an organisation, the resources as the infrastructure, as an investment. It's an asset and it's an investment, because we won't necessarily see an investment saving money now, but down the track we should have enough data and we should have more capability and be able to use everything that's there to be seeing things in real time and not be having to wait for research studies to show things later on, including what I was trying to get to was safety signals. So we might think, and there's excellent research to say that some of the, so chest x-rays, for example, some of the radiology innovations are actually way better than humans at detecting a whole range of different things. And so you can implement these things and then hope that that really is going to be true in every case, but having a system that's collecting data can start to pick up some of those safety signals earlier than they would have otherwise. In your work, do you have more comments on what that looks like in the system once it's out of research?
You mean around once the technology's been adopted, and so well, look, you need to have governance around all of this and to manage risk, because some of these technologies do degrade over time, and human beings degrade over time, which is why we've got requirements for continuous professional development as well as clinicians, and we're meant to stay on the register. You have to continue to learn and educate yourself, because medicine and healthcare just changes at such incredible speed. So with technologies, once you adopt them, you can't just adopt them and then just leave them. They have to be subject to ongoing audit, and looking at new risks that might emerge, looking at whether it still remains suitable for the local patient population that you're serving. Look, some of the technologies have got phenomenal capabilities to analyze data in a way that human beings cannot, and can see pictures in the data that the human mind is just never going to be able to process those volumes of information, and won't see patterns in that. But it needs to go back through a human lens and see, well, is that correct in the context of this individual? Does it make sense as well? And because at the end of the day, the human being is going to be responsible for that and liable for the decision that's made for that patient the technology just is not a legal entity and can't take responsibility for that.
Can I add something? Because it's all about a changing risk profile, right? So I think there's this great study by Farah Maghrabi that shows, that the technology did reduce, and I'm going to not quote the numbers because I can't remember them, I'm not good with numbers, but anyway, it did reduce the number of adverse events, but it introduces new ones as well, right? So it's great there's a reduction, but there's this growth and introduction of a whole new set of risks as well. And so that's really important as well, because it's a change in your risk profile, and then your governance needs to be adaptive to assess that new risk and respond and put the mitigation and see what your residual risk, and see if you have tolerance for that residual risk in your organisation or wherever you're, and if you're not, then you decrease it even more with more mitigation. So it's around managing the risk profile, I think, as well, to this continuous evolving technologies.
So it's definitely not we've tested something in a small way, we've just implemented it, and then that's how we do things. We're constantly assessing that risk over time.
Yeah, which is being reflected in the chat too. I can see that Janelle has raised a really good point to see how and this is just to complement what you've said, that the and actually build on it too, like interested to see what the ethics process review might look like and how it might need to change for clinical trials, particularly as more and more customizations are made to user-specific patient information sheets, which is similar to the challenges around trying to do the software as a medical device thing on the other side, which is if something's continually changing, how can we kind of put it in a box and say, well, this is all good now. And that actually ties into Theo's suggestion, which is just up on the chat too, which is perhaps that we need a framework that that defines what roles and interactions that the AI has and what roles and interactions the human has. So I guess there's all the different ideas and thinking about how we can put some controls around something that's continually evolving and building and growing, much like a human might do, but at a different scale.
Yeah, for sure. We are coming live from the conference. That is not a fire alarm, but that is the signal that everybody's going to go back into session. We've only got a couple of minutes left on this live in any case, and I'm wondering, we talked about so much collaboration, we've talked about safety, we've talked a lot about AI. There's more to it than that. What are you most looking forward to across the next day and a half at HIC, Monica? What's interesting or exciting?
So much. Well, most importantly, the event tonight, I'm looking forward to. Sorry,
we're not
I'm a people person. But it is all about people, really. I want to see some practical next steps and what we're doing and bringing back that obviously to us in Telstra Health, but also how we build that as a collective, or just some key steps to see some of these things happening. I don't know if anyone was there on the Sunday when we showed Australian was really risk averse, and we were really risk averse. And so I'd love that all these things that we've got our brain going, that we're actually able to put into a plan of action together. That's probably what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, fantastic. Saran.
Well, I'm heading back to South Australia tonight, so I missed out on tonight dinner. But I think for me, I'm actually really looking forward to just like hearing everything that I have over the last few days. I'm really looking forward to seeing where it goes. Like, that's really exciting. There are so many things that have just sort of really interested me and really I'm really excited about. So I'm linking up with all these people and meeting them in person, which is great as well. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
I'll give the beeping a second to stop. I'm a policy geek at heart and a policy wonk, and I'm loving the international speakers that are coming in and sharing their perspectives around how their international health systems are looking at tackling some of these similar things, and they're coming up with a lot of the same issues that we are around safety, governance, regulation, not keeping at pace with new technologies. And this afternoon as well, I've got somebody speaking from the Ministry of Health in Indonesia as well around their realization of their digital strategy as well, and how they're doing it. And I'm really interested to see how a neighbouring middle-income country is always tackling some of those same challenges that we have.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And kind of as a closing from my mind, what I'm interested in hearing from a few of the sessions, and I've really been picking up on, is the focus on individualising healthcare for people. We didn't even get to talk about it today, but our country now is properly multicultural. That's always used as a throwaway term, but the reality is well-educated white people who have used most of the healthcare and had easiest access are not the majority of people who live in this country. And so what I've been seeing in the different models of care is Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander-led models where we're having conversations about how do you use some of these technologies to use cultural safety frameworks across the board quickly, easily, efficiently, and in ways that mean something to people. I'm looking forward to thinking about the system being designed to help the person with what they need rather than help the system provide what it's done before and then maybe invite us to come and access it. It's all happening here. I'm so pleased to have been able to share this hour talking kind of just with you guys and with you, Pete. And thanks so much for listening in if you're listening from home. Brilliant to see some of our clinical trials colleagues get involved in the conversation about digital health too. I'd love to know if you'd like us to do more lives from conferences, what was useful, what we should talk about next. I'm going to throw to Pete, who has been running Talking HealthTech as a community alongside AIDH as a community. Really thank you for that, but some closing words from you.
Yeah, look, I mean, you've covered it so well in terms of the topics and themes, and I guess the purpose of this live stream was to be able to give people, I say at home or just out and about globally, a taste of what's happening, and you get to feel the ambience and the vibe, and it sounds like we're about to board a plane, but that's okay. I'm super excited. We had comments and engagement from a lot of people around Australia, Slovenia, Japan, and different stakeholders involved too, which is the whole purpose of this in the first place, which is as we're evolving within healthcare, different stakeholders going to need to be involved too. We're all trying to do the same thing, and that's, I know, a really strong drive from AIDH and Talking HealthTech as well. So thank you everyone for making the time. And thank you for joining the stream, and the recording is available straight into YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, probably in Skywriting as well, everywhere. It's available anywhere, and please do give us feedback and comments on what you want to hear next. Thanks so much.